Hey everyone, welcome to the first episode of Critical Contemporary Education. And you might be wondering, what is this course or podcast or class that I'm doing? This is a PowerPoint or a series of PowerPoints that I am doing in my Critical Contemporary Education class in college. And I was wondering if you wanted to learn what is going on in the class. Here is the first PowerPoint that I'll be going over. And this is an actual PowerPoint that I am doing in my class. And this is also a way to help me learn. So if I teach it and study, it helps me study it. So the first episode or class I am doing is about classical philosophers. You might be wondering, why are you teaching or telling us about classical philosophers? What does this have to do with education? Well, these philosophers relate to education or in some form or fashion. Okay, so the classical period spanned roughly from the 5th century BCE to the 4th century CE, centered in ancient Greece and Rome, marked by the birth of Western, I think that was supposed to be Western, philosophy, democracy, literature, and science. A time of intellectual flourishing, especially in Athens, which became a hot tub for education and civic life. City-states, or also known as polis, like Athens and Sparta, were politically independent and culturally rich. Democracy in Athens allowed for public debate, civic participation, and philosophical inquiry. Frequent wars, examples, the Peloponnesian War, and instability influenced philosophical thought. It's a hard word to pronounce. Okay, so for sure, it's still talking about the classical period and core themes of classical thought: humanism, rational inquiry, literature, and the good life, education, and citizenship. Humanism focuses on human potential, reason, and ethics. Rational inquiry uses logical and reason to understand the world. Virtue and the good life, essential concern with how to live well and justly. Education and citizenship is seen as a central form of moral and capable citizens. Continuing with the classical period, the role of philosophy. Philosophy emerged as a way to question tradition, myth, and authority. Philosophers sought to understand truth, justice, knowledge, and the soul. Dialogue and the debate were key tools for exploring ideas, why it matters for education. Classical thinkers laid the foundation of Western education theory. Their ideas continue to influence curriculum, pedagogy, and civic education today. Understanding their context helps students grasp why their questions and methods still matter. Classical philosophy, Socrates. This is the first philosopher we're going to be talking about. He had no written work, which means a lot of the stuff that we learn about him goes through his student Plato and through his writings, especially in his work, The Apology. He is famous for declaring the unexamined life is not worth living. His approach laid the groundwork for critical thinking and philosophical inquiry. So continuing about Socrates, we're going to talk about the Socratic method. It is a form of dialogue and questioning aimed at uncovering the truth. Socrates claimed ignorance using questions to challenge assumptions and expose contradictions, encourage critical thought, critical examination of beliefs, intuitions, and societal norms. Trial and death, charged with impunity and corruption in 399 BC. His defense in the Apology reveals his commitment to truth over conformity. His death illustrates the tension between individual conscience and societal authority. He advocated for informed critical citizenship, believed education should challenge traditional values, not reinforce them. His role as a gadfly, I forgot what this also like a good illustration of what a gadfly, but doesn't really come up right now. Is a gadfly. His role as a gadfly made him amoral, and intellectual irritant to the state. Socratic dialogue remains a timeless tool in education. It encourages students to think deeply, question assumptions, and engage in ethical reflection. His method is foundational in philosophy, law, and pedagogy. Okay, now we're going to talk about his student, Plato, the one where we learned most about him, most about Socrates. Plato was deeply influenced by the unjust trial and execution of Socrates, which shaped his commitment to truth, justice, and the role of education in society. Believed in a higher realm of perfect, changing forms or ideas, examples justice, beauty, that physical reality only imperfectly reflects. Education is the process of guiding the soul toward understanding these forms. Functional view of education. This was his functional view, or he had a functional view of education. In the Republic, Plato outlines a society where education is tailored to individuals' natural abilities, ensuring each person contributes to society in the most effective way. Tripartite soul and social classes, rulers, are also known as wisdom, who are the ones who have wisdom. Philosophers, these are philosophers who govern. Auxiliaries, also known as the ones with courage, are soldiers who protect. Producers, also the also known as the moderation, uh, are craftspeople and farmers who sustain. Like craftspeople, as like craftspeople or farmers who have have a moderation of things. Soldiers usually have a lot of courage, and philosophers have wisdom. Education is used to identify and cultivate these roles. Usually this picture was a bit bigger, but then when I was editing, it condensed it to that much. But Plato, the allegory of the cave, a metaphor for the journey from ignorance to enlightenment. Prisoners in a cave see only shadows, illusions. Education helps them turn the light truth. Emphasizes the transformation power of education and the philosopher's duty to guide others. Plato opposed relativism, believed that truth is subjective, and championed absolutism, belief in objective truths. He believed that education should help individuals discover universal truths, not just a personal opinion. Plato's ideas had been critical for the elitist and rigid. His emphasis on reason, justice, and the moral of education remains foundational in Western education thought. Okay, now we're going to talk about Aristotle, who was the student of Plato. So we have two students back to back. Plato being Socrates' student and Aristotle being Plato's student. But he diverged significantly from Plato's views. He was around, I don't know that this is accurately, or he was alive from 384 to 322 BCE. He emphasized empirical observation over Plato's abstract forms, believe reality is found in the natural world, not to separate realm of ideas. Introduce the concept of teleology. Everything has a purpose or end, as known as telos. Example, an acorn's telos is to become an tree. So telos would be like its purpose, or like what I just said. Applied this concept. He applied this concept to humans' constitutions and philosophers. Philosophers each has a potential to fulfill. Classical philosophy also continues. He rejected Plato's communism and philosopher kings. He advocated modest property ownership and nuclear families as essential to human flourishing. Believed that polis, also known as safety, should promote mutual benefit. Sorry. Should promote mutual benefit and citizen virtue. His educational philosophy was that it should be publicly provided by the polis, also known as the city-state, aimed at cultivating virtue and reason in citizens. The education is central to achieving the food life and a just society. Classical philosophy Aristotle promoted the idea that the golden mean is virtue that lies between extremes. Studied over 160 constitutions to understand the ideal government, he believed that in constitutional change through reason, analysis, and empirical study. Aristotle's blend of empiricism and ethics remains influential in education, politics, and science. His philosophy encourages practical reasoning, ethical citizenship, and purpose-driven education. The Enlightenment occurred during 17th to 18th centuries, following the Scientific Revolution. It has a time of intellectual awakening, emphasizing reason, science, and individual rights. It was influenced majorly by political revolutions, including the American and French Revolution. Impact on the impact it has on education and society. Education became a tool for liberation and empowerment. Philosophers questioned traditional schooling and proposed new models based on reason and experience. The ideas from this era laid the groundwork for modern democracy, human rights, and public education systems. Now, the Enlightenment philosopher John Locke, from 1632 to 1704, Locke was responding to Thomas Hobbes, who favored benevolent monarchy. This describes a king who is deeply mindful of the welfare of both his subjects and family. Beloved in natural rights like life, liberty, and property, he advocated for representative government based on a social contract. Citizens have the right to revoke the contract if government abuses power. His political theory is humans are rational, free, and equal in the state of nature, supported limited self-government, and majority rule. He emphasized the negative liberty, freedom from interference. Okay, and his educational philosophy. Locke was an empirist. All knowledge comes from sense experience. He rejected Plato's forms and Aristotle's teleology. He believed the mind was a tabula rasa, or a blank state, at birth. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly. Learning progresses from a simple to complex ideas through experience. He supported home education with parents and primary educators. He opposed public schooling except for the poor, and he thinks education should foster moral reasoning and individual development. Locke's ideas contrast with Plato's idealism and Aristotle's technology. His fear of centralized power led to skepticism of institutional education. Some inconsistencies exist between his regulation ideals, all, also known as all people are equal, and limited education access. Enlightenment philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau, I hope I pronounced that correctly, from 1712 to 1778, a romantic critic of Enlightenment opposing its emphasis on reason and science. Believed Enlightenment ideas led to alienation and tyranny, undermining human compassion and interdependence. Rejected atomistic individualism promoted by Hobbes, Locke, and Locke. Enlightenment, continuing on the Enlightenment philosopher Jean Rousseau, political theory. His political theory. He advocated for representative government, rooted in the general will, a collective moral force aimed at the common good, emphasized community and equality over self-interest. His work inspired the French Revolution, though he died before it occurred. His education philosophy. Emile outlines Rousseau's vision for natural education, focusing on the development of a young boy. He thinks education should be child-centered, allowing learning through experience, interaction with nature. He believed that children are naturally good and corrupted by society. He proposed different educational models for males and females based on natural differences. Female education is aimed at supporting male development, reflecting Rousseau's patriarchal association. I think that's what the word was. Rousseau's ideas challenge Enlightenment rationalism, and influenced progressive education. He criticized for gender bias and individual and idealized views of nature. His emphasis on freedom, emotion, holistic development remains influential in educational theory. Now we're on to Marx and Engels. Karl Marx was from 1818 to 1883, and Friedrich Engels was from 1820 to 1895. They were influenced by Hegel, but rejected his metaphysical focus. The Communist Manifesto, they applied the dialectical reasoning to the material world, like history, economics, and relations. Their key concepts. Historical materialism is the history progress through stages defined by economic production. Each stage contains class antagonisms that drive social change. Species being humans that are naturally creative and productive. Capitalism alienated people from true nature by reducing them to laborers. Sorry, I'm very tired. Alienation and exploitation is where workers are alienated from their labor, products, and fellow humans. The labor under capitalism is objectified and exploited for profit. Based on superstructure, the economic base, also known as the production, shapes the superstructure, culture, politics, education. The education serves to reinforce capitalist ideologies. Commodity fetishism, and reification. Social relationships are obscured by the value of placed on commodities. Human qualities are transferred to objects, distorting reality. The Education and Revolution Marx viewed education as a tool for social reproduction under capitalism. True education should promote critical consciousness and prepare individuals for revolutionary change. Charles Dickens had hard times, illustrates Marxist critiques, and depicts utilitarian schooling, factory life, and standardization. Characters embody the dehumanizing effects of early capitalism. Why do we care about these old guys and their ideas? Because of the philosophical roots of educational thought. Classical and Enlightenment philosophers shaped the core ideas of knowledge, learning, citizenship, and development. U.S. education did not emerge in a vacuum. It was built on these intellectual traditions. Understanding competing visions of education. Plato emphasized education for justice and societal harmony. Aristotle focused on the virtue and practical reasoning. Locke promoted individual liberty and empiricism. Rousseau advocated for natural development and emotional growth. Marx critiqued education as a tool of social reproduction under capitalism. Education can be serve different purposes from liberation to control. Framing U.S. educational debates about public versus private school, individualization, equity, and citizenship echo philosophical tensions from these thinkers. Locke's ideas influence individuals' rights and liberal education. Rousseau's child-centered approach inspired progressive education. Marx's critique informs critical pedagogy and socialist education. Developing critical thinking. It helps us develop critical thinking. Studying all these philosophers encourages the questioning of assumptions, analysis of systems, and to the education as the moral political act. It helps to prepare you to engage thoughtfully with historical developments and current challenges in the U.S.